Okay, hello everyone. This is Jim Daly from Daily Manufacturing, back to visit with you again. Today we're going to be looking at some research from the past year that to me was important, and I think you will find it was too. There's some interesting developments over the past year. But first of all, Happy New Year, everybody. Um, Let me get this. Oops, I did have it on that. Okay. Let's just say how great it is, how wonderful that we made it through another year. We've had successes, and we've had a good year. And my little bin clock is letting me know that it's time to get started here. I hope it's been a great year for the people out there. We've all made it through another year, and there's a lot of people that haven't, so that's something to be thankful for. We'll keep going here and talk about some of the new things that have come up. A very new paper, it's just published online but not actually officially published yet, is about the soybeans, the microbiome, and equal. And that's actually my research. And let me show it to you here. It's in the Journal of Medicinal Food. This is the journal. You can see that. It's a very good journal, and it happens to be one that I have been associate editor of for about 14 or 15 years now, I think, for a long time. And it's one that I think is really good, and I've been proud to be a part of. But I have a paper coming out that I've published with some colleagues, and you can look at it here. It's Equal decreases hot flashes in postmenopausal women, a systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized trials, clinical trials. Now, I want to explain a little bit first to everybody to make sure they're up to speed exactly what a meta-analysis is. Now, when we do research, we always end up with data, and we might be doing it for anything, but we'll have at least two data sets. One treatment and another kind of a control group. And the treatment, you like to see something improved. And you will see differences between the two groups. What you don't know a lot of times, just by looking at the raw data, is whether the differences you're seeing are just random differences, or if there was really truly an effect. So to determine that, we do a statistical analysis. Now, just to illustrate that, I show flipping a coin here. If I flip 10 coins on this side, I would probably get heads 5 of the times and tails 5 of the times if it worked out just exactly perfectly. In the real world, that doesn't happen. So I might get 5 heads here, and I might get 7 heads over here with only 3 tails. Now, we know that flipping a coin, that's just random chance that happened. However, if we were giving somebody, just say an herb that's supposed to lower their cholesterol, and we saw that the cholesterol stayed the same in the one group on the right-hand side, but on the left-hand side, it decreased some. Now, we would say, well, that could happen by chance, or it could be a real effect of our treatment. So what we do is a test to see if it is truly a real effect or a random effect. And we set a level of certainty at 5% that this could only happen with our mathematical analysis 5% of the time randomly. So 95% of the time, this would be a real effect with numbers like this. And it's based on the size of the difference in the number of the experiments or tests. So what happens is we end up with some studies showing differences but not really any effects, and some studies showing some that are. Now, we had a meta-analysis of clinical trials using Equal, which is an isoflavone produced by gut bacteria from the soy isoflavone diadzine. Well, of the 5 studies that we could put in the analysis, 2 of them showed no effect, significant effect, and 3 showed there were a significant effect. So a lot of times what happens when you show no effect, there might really not be an effect. On the other hand, there could be an effect, but you had too small of a number of subjects for it to be statistically significant. There again, to be at that 0.05. So, and that can happen a lot of times. I was at a experimental biology meeting about 3 years ago in Chicago, and a guy was presenting some of his research that he published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And he was saying, I got my results and statistics back. The statistics said it was not significant because it was 0.05001. He says, you can't make that up. You know, if it had been 4.999, it would have been statistically significant. And he could say that it was a real effect in the journal. But because it was just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit above that, he had to say there was no effect in the journal. So that's your cutoff, and they're pretty strict with that a lot of times. And the Journal of the American Medical Association is very strict. However, in real life, is there really that much difference between 0.05001 and 0.49999? Well, you know, there really isn't. It's sort of arbitrary. So when we get that kind of situation sometimes, a lot of these trials are in fairly small numbers of subjects or animals or whatever. And so we see differences, but sometimes they're significant, sometimes they're not. The way we get around that is by doing a meta-analysis like we did in our study. And you actually combine the data from all 5 trials into one trial to give you a much larger number. Now sometimes you do that, and instead of having very close data, you'll see that there's really not an effect. Sometimes you'll see there really is an effect, because with that bigger numbers you get very much better statistics. So that's what we did in our study, and we found that in this study that there was a very significant effect of Equal in preventing hot flashes in postmenopausal women. So that's great, and we were really glad to hear that. But now, what is Equal? How do you get it? Okay, Equal, like I said, comes from soybeans and other things as well. Soybeans have the isoflavone diadzine. So does kudzu, if you know what that is. So does red clover. All these things have these isoflavones. Some have more of the diadzine than others. But the gut bacteria actually change it into Equal. And what we found is that people who could make Equal and took the soy isoflavones had the improvements, or that people who were just given Equal already made had the improvements. So there are trials that did both. But anyway, increasing their amount of Equal from the diet had a very significant effect on the hot flashes in those women. So that was great. And we were really happy to see that. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a break from that, and we'll get back to some more research in a little bit. We've got some letters in here from customers who have written to us, and my staff helped me with this. So let's look at some of the letters we've gotten over the past year. This is about, well, it says best supplements. Okay, I'd like to hear that. From Evelyn A. In the Philippines. Dear Dr. Jim, thank you for making the very best supplements. Wow, that's great. Nice to hear. Evelyn, dear Evelyn, I write back, I am blushing. I never claimed to be the best. That sounds too much like bragging. I would never do that. However, we do go to a lot of trouble to make the best possible supplements. There are a number of ways that some companies do cut corners to get the price down and be very price competitive. Some make the supplements with a little under the listed dosage, and it's cheating a bit, and you're not supposed to do it, but the FDA says that when you make a supplement, say you have 100 milligrams of an active ingredient, you can be plus or minus 5%. That's what the FDA says. Okay, there are companies out there that will make sure they're at the minus 5%, because that saves them a little bit of money. And it happens quite a lot, actually. Now, that doesn't mean the product is not going to work at all, but you're not getting really what you paid for when they do that. Other companies shop for the very lowest priced ingredients possible. And believe me, they really fight over price. A lot of these big companies do. A friend of mine who sells ingredients to companies like that was really just fit to be tied, to use an expression, over a company that he did a lot of business with. He was friends with the guy. He was trying to sell him like several tons of an ingredient that costs almost $500 a kilo. We're talking about some big money here. And he got within 5 cents of the lowest bidder, and the guy went with the other person anyway, even though he probably couldn't know for sure that it was a good quality. But over 5% on something that 5 cents, that on something that costs $500 a kilo, you know, he went to the other company. When you're really trying to fight on price to that degree, you're asking for problems, really, because people are going to find a way of cutting corners to get the price down a lot of times. They might dilute the product a little bit. They might put some lower grade material in or something. But when they're that price conscious, that's really asking for problems. Something some other companies have done, and actually some fairly major ones, have bought supplements that are overrun products by other companies that are getting a little bit old, buy them, rebottle them, and sell them. And you know, that's not illegal or anything, but you're getting an older product that's not as good, probably, when that happens, but they do that. A lot of companies just buy low quality ingredients, and they're out there, no way around it. There are ingredients that just are not up to snuff. They might make low quality tablets or capsules. You can make tablets and capsules very cheaply. You can add a lot of material in there that don't really do anything, fillers and things that really just make something that looks big and nice and runs very easily, but doesn't really contribute to the cost, and sometimes might affect it in a negative way. And then many companies make poorly designed products. And when I say poorly designed, they're just taking and looking at what other people are making and say, well, I'm going to make this cheaper. And they're the same thing, and not really putting any thought into their product development. So there's a lot of ways, Evelyn, that people can really cut corners and not make good products. Now, there are other products out there, other companies out there that do a good job, and I'm not going to say there's not. We're not the only people that do a good job of making supplements. And I don't want to put down other people, but we do try to make very good quality supplements, and I appreciate you saying that you recognize that and appreciate it. Now this one was a little bit different, and it might be something some of you all have looked at. Dear Dr. Jim, I love cooking with limes. I like to drink limeade. However, your lime water does not taste like limes. Why is that? Okay, this is Barbara Z. Hershey, Pennsylvania. Barbara, that's because it doesn't have limes in it. It has the mineral lime in it. lime water is actually a name for a saturated solution of slaked lime that chemists have used for years. And so that's what this lime water is. Dr. Reams used this formula for helping to adjust the pH of people, particularly when it's very hard to do, people who just didn't move their pHs easily. So this is basically a calcium hydroxide solution, and it really is a good product. It is not a good tasting product. Sorry about that. Okay, what have we got here? Relax evening formula. Dear Daily Manufacturing, I tried the Relax evening formula. I've never slept so well in my life. I have a very high stress job, and this helps me to be awake and alert. Thank you for making America sleep again. Donald T., Washington, D.C. Huh? Lorena Michelle, did you put that in there? Okay. Yes, Donald, the Relaxed Evening formula is an outstanding new product. It is a calming and relaxing and feel-good product. Formula with an optimal dose of tryptophan and serotonin. It also has melatonin, this kind of sleep hormone, and Bacopa moneri extract, which is really a nice herb that relaxes you, relieves stress, and helps you. It doesn't really make you sleep, but it helps you really get ready for sleep. Donald T., I can understand how you would benefit from this formula. Glad we could help you. Okay, not sure about this one, but no, I'm just kidding. I made that one up. That's the only one I really made up. Okay, and then finally, dear LMD. Okay, we all know who that is, I think, one of our employees. I really appreciate the eyebright formula. I can see so much better now. My eye doctor is very impressed that my eyesight is actually improving. Wow. Thank you, Delia G., New Mexico. All right. Well, I'm sure out there in New Mexico, there's lots of nice things to see. So I'm glad your eyesight is improving. We cannot really say that eyebright will cure eye diseases. That hasn't been proven at all. However, it is well documented that key nutrients, such as those in eyebright, can help people maintain good eyesight. So, eyebright is a unique in that it contains very high quality nutrients such as zinc, lutein, and other carotenoids, and those are actually found in a lot of eye formulas. But we use really very high quality of those ingredients. However, it also has vitamin E, which is also often in the eye formula, but a lot of times it's not the natural vitamin E, which is really a lot better, and the mixtocopherol. But what's especially unique about our formula that sets it apart from everybody else I know of is that it has GABA in it, gamma-aminobutyric acid. That is a neurotransmitter. Your brain uses it, but also it's a neurotransmitter in the eyes, and it conducts signals from the retina to the brain to help. It really helps get the signals there and vivid. What happens with age a lot of times, you have less of the GABA in your eyes, and you don't get as strong of a signal. So your eye vision gets a little weaker. It's not that it's blurry. It's not that it closes in like you have with some of the eye diseases, but it's just not quite as strong, and you may not see as well at night either, for that matter. So you don't get as strong of a signal. Turns out about almost 20 years ago, in the journal Science, which is probably the most important scientific journal in the world, there was a study where they took old chimpanzees, I believe it was, and actually did a way of doing an eye test on them, developed it, so they could see how well they could vision was. And they, recorded the results. They then took the GABA, and it was a shorter term study, but they actually injected it into their eyes to put it more there. Now, you would never do that with a person, but they put the GABA, injected it into their eyes, and there was a very big improvement in their eyesight. It was an amazing study, actually. I'm not sure why everybody out there making eye supplements didn't jump on that, but at any rate, the results were wonderful. And so I decided I was going to put it in there, and they suggested that in that study that supplementing GABA might be a good thing for people's eyes, and because it will get there slower. Injecting, you saw an immediate effect in those apes, but taking it, it'll take a little longer, but you don't want people injecting it in your eyes. So the eyebright is a really unique formula that has a much better effect, in my opinion, than anything on the market besides it. So I really glad to hear that you're getting great results out there in New Mexico. I think a lot of people are getting good results. It may not be as noticeable to some people, or maybe they're not all telling us, but it's a wonderful formula, and you should be taking it if you have any eye problems at all. One other thing I'll say about the eyebright is not only good for your eyes, because these eye nutrients are also beneficial in the brain. See, the brain is protected by the carotenoids like the lutein and zeaxanthin, those things, just like the eyes are. Also, the brain can use that GABA as a neurotransmitter. It's important there too. So really, we have a separate formula for brain, but you will get a double benefit from eyebright just because those nutrients are so important for the brain. Okay, well, we're going to move along now. It was great to get these letters. I would like to hear from more people because it's really interesting to see how people do react to our supplements. And, if it's good or bad, really, if you have problems with the supplement, we need to hear about it, too. Of course, it's more fun to get the good letters, no question. But, if there is a problem, we need to address it. So we're always looking for feedback from customers. And we do pay attention to that. We keep a file of it, and you can make suggestions for new products you would like at times, too. So, do stay in touch with us. We're glad to hear from you. Well, let's move on. There's a nice little interlude there from the research. One of the most interesting subjects to me of the past year was the new research about magnesium and vitamin D. The new research shows that, and this is a journal, or at least one of the journals that published this research, this research is talking about how magnesium is absolutely essential for vitamin D to be utilized. It actually is part of an enzyme complex that's used to kind of activate vitamin D. It's part of attaches it to a protein as a transport protein to help it get where it needs to be. So they found that people who are deficient in magnesium often are also have a functional deficiency in vitamin D. Even if their vitamin D levels are high enough, in some cases, they still may have a functional deficiency due to the lack of magnesium. Although probably most of these people, because it does work with the transport protein, will not have as high magnesium levels as they would if they were taking the magnesium. Now, there are a lot of times we hear that people take vitamin D, they go to their doctor, and they're still deficient. Well, why would that be? I mean, if you're taking way more than the recommended dietary allowance of vitamin D, why would you be deficient in it? And you know that, if you got enough sunlight, you probably wouldn't need to take it at all. Most people wouldn't. Some people would, actually. But nevertheless, why would you be deficient in vitamin D? Well, for one thing, it might be vitamin D2 you're taking. You have to take twice as much vitamin D2 to get the same results as vitamin D3. So that could be part of it. You may not be taking enough of it. Just taking the recommended dietary allowance of vitamin D frequently does not do the job for people. As we mentioned before, might be magnesium deficient. You may need to up the magnesium you're taking or start taking it if you're not. You could be taking a product in which the magnesium is degraded. Magnesium is not real stable. And if it's been, vitamin D is not real stable. So if it's been stored improperly, or if it's getting old, or if it's just a poor quality vitamin D, you may not be getting as much vitamin D as you think you're getting. And we've had experience with that. Our vitamin D right now should be potent for 3 years. And we've actually got stability studies to prove that. We've got some before from another supplier that had completely degraded to nothing in 6 months' time. And we ended up throwing away, I don't know, I think several thousand bottles of vitamin D. It was a lot. That was just, that was heart-breaking to throw all that away. But, we're not going to sell it if there's vitamin D isn't what there that's supposed to be. Taking vitamin D on an empty stomach can be a problem too, because vitamin D has to be absorbed as these liposomes or micelles that are formed in the stomach from proteins, lipids, the bile acids acting on them, form these little spheres that the vitamin D is part of, and it's absorbed that way. If you're taking it just with water, it's probably not going to be absorbed well, so you really need to think about that. And then, some people just simply have poor absorption of lipids in the gut. Especially if you've had a gallbladder removed, you may not absorb the lipids very well. And it could be a lot harder for you to get your vitamin D levels up because, you're just not absorbing the lipids. So, that's something to consider. In that case, you may have to take a lot more vitamin D than you would otherwise. One of the things I'm thinking of and working on right now is to come up with a vitamin D complex that kind of combines some of these things together. The magnesium, the proteins, some lipids, all in one capsule to make it a little bit easier. I'd still recommend, if we get that going, and I think we will, taking it with food, because it's still going to be, that's going to be the optimal way of taking it. But taking a mixed combination like that may help your vitamin D be absorbed and utilized a lot better. So that's a new product I'm working on. I would really encourage people when they go to their doctors, if you do, and get blood tests, to get your vitamin D checked, because there's really no other way to know if you have adequate vitamin D or not. It's not that expensive to add on to that. In fact, that and B12 both, I would tell people to get checked at least once a year if you can. If not, at least sometimes get it checked and just make sure you're okay there, because a lot of people, and my doctor I go says that he sees very few people that really have optimal vitamin D concentrations in their blood. They're not all, frankly, really severely deficient, but to have up to where you really need it, he says it's not too often anybody does. So he recommends almost all of his patients take vitamin D. Okay, finally, one more topic. I think the last year would have to be considered the year of the probiotics and the gut microbiome. It's been a hot topic for quite a while now. And I actually wanted to sort of point out two negative studies. That seems kind of odd for us in a way, but there's a reason for it. Two negative studies on probiotics. The one study that was in Clinical Translational Gastroenterology found that people who were taking in a lot of probiotics or eating lots of probiotic foods actually had a lactic acidosis in a lot of cases. It was more common. I wouldn't say a lot of cases, but it's more common among subjects using probiotics. It was also linked to what you call small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO. And symptoms were alleviated after they discontinued the probiotics. So what was going on there? Well, the SIBO is probably not a problem in that case because you slow down the probiotics, it'll go away. But remember, most of these probiotics are bacteria that grow primarily in the large intestine, in the gut. They don't grow so much in the small intestine. So if you're taking big doses of probiotics, they've got to go through the small intestine before they get to the large intestine where you want them. So that means it could be very easy for these probiotics to be overabundant in your small intestine. And so that can cause, symptoms such as gas, bloating. The lactobacillus, they produce lactic acid. They're lactic acid producing bacteria. And, for those of you who do the RBTI program, you want to avoid getting overly acidic. And we actually use calcium lactate for the lactic acid in it to help people when they're overly alkaline to become more acidic. But if you're already acidic and you're taking so much of it that you're getting more lactic acid in the small intestine being absorbed, that makes you a little bit more acidic. So you need to kind of watch that. That's something a little tricky to work with. So I'm not necessarily in favor of real huge doses of probiotics. I like to think of them as seeds that you plant to grow where they belong. And so that's kind of my approach to probiotics. The other study looked at post-antibiotic microbiome reconstitution and found that it was actually impaired by the probiotics. And that one really took me back for a little bit, and I had to think about it. But as I thought about it, it made a certain amount of sense. The probiotics delayed the return of the gut microbiome to normal after antibiotic treatment. Now, why would that be? Well, there's actually a good reason for it. And they found that a fecal transplant, and if you know what that is, it's where you take feces, make a solution of them, and give your person an enema. And that is actually used by a lot of medical doctors who treat people who have a problem with their gut bacteria. As long as you get a good donor for that, it works out quite well, actually. The consequences of the taking longer to return to normal were not clear, but it was kind of worrisome because that's the reason a lot of people did it, to restore their bacteria. Well, what happens is that these good bacteria are only a small fraction of the bacteria in a normal gut. You've got, most people will have anywhere from a few hundred to 1,000 species of bacteria in their gut. There's only about, at most 15 or 20 bacteria that people sell as probiotics. So most of the bacteria are not reconstituted. The antibiotics are really hard on your gut bacteria, no question. They really go in and wipe them out. A lot of those good bacteria are going to just barely be there, and some of them may be gone. But the lactobacilli, which are wonderful bacteria, one of the things they do is produce what they call bacteriocins that actually kill other bacteria. So if you think about it, if you're taking a whole lot of something that kills bacteria, other bacteria, after taking antibiotics, you may be making some of those that you can't take as a probiotic have a harder time coming back. And I think that's what they were finding there. In that case, you really should take a lower dose antibiotic, probiotic after antibiotics, and not try to, take the big doses to bring levels up of the probiotic bacteria, because some of those are going to make some of the ones you can't take harder to go back to normal. So when you would take a high dose probiotic, it's when you have a person with what they call dysbiosis. They have problems with the gut bacteria they have. They have an overgrowth of a lot of the bad ones, like the Clostridia or something. Taking some of these lactobacilli will really cut those back and works pretty effectively for reducing those. So the high dose bacteria probiotic would be useful in that situation, but not after an antibiotic, I don't think. So I think we're trying to learn how to use these things more skillfully. And these kind of studies that are negative really help us to learn how to use the supplements that we have more effectively and better, and when to use them and when not to use them. And that's really the goal. How do we make these supplements work for people to improve their health? So I think that's going to wind it up for today. We're going to be back next month. And I really hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season, a great new year, and that your 2019 is going to be even better than 2018 was. Thank you very much.